you can just share some 2 or 3 hacks that our viewers can use immediately.
You can build something of real value. You don't need to sell your soul. You don't need to grind out 80-hour weeks. For me, this slow productivity really works. It's the antithesis of hustle culture. I don't like hustle culture. I've never done it. I never have. I've been very fortunate in my 25-year career. I've never suffered from burnout.
If you open LinkedIn or Insta or Facebook, you keep on seeing too many hacks.
I think it's unlikely that a 10-second video on TikTok is going to help you do that.
With the advent of AI, many youngsters are getting into the trap of procrastination.
If AI ever reaches the singularity, which is actually replicating and exceeding human intelligence, then I think we do have a problem.
Do you think that introverts are people who shy away from leadership?
Paul Scholes didn't have some of those qualities that Roy Keane had in terms of what we might naturally assume as leadership, which is the vocal, the presence, the charisma. But Paul Scholes was also a leader. He followed the leadership of Roy Keane, but through his own abilities.
For youngsters, how do you really encourage them to the best possible way? Because now AI can do almost everything.
Nobody can write a Stephen King book except Stephen King or George Orwell or Franz Kafka, because they are working with their gut instinct, they are working with the human nature. Knowledge is knowing that the tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
Welcome to this Fireside Chat series, The Modern CMO. And today we have two phenomenal personalities, James Gibb and Chitra Rajan, who have really contributed immensely in executive and leadership coaching. Let me introduce you to James Gibb, who is an executive and leadership coach and specializes in helping senior professionals, leaders, and executives achieve a balanced and meaningful life. And we have Chitra Rajan, who has really spent about a couple of decades in a corporate firm and leads the sales operations side. She has immense experience in really understanding the human behavior and also coaching some of the youngsters in her own team. Welcome to both of you, and we are glad that you are here with us to discuss on what it takes to be a mentor, one, and what the leadership coaching is all about, because we have often seen that as people grow, they tend to really need someone who can handhold them and then take them to a space where they don't really feel very comfortable in dealing with new challenges, new scenarios and all that. So I want you to really put your experience out here and tell us a bit more about your own experience. I'll first go to James. James, please tell us a bit more about how you see this mentorship world and why does one really need to have a mentor to grow in their life. I know that you also have a company which is Deep Life Journey. Please throw some light on that as well. And then we'll go to Chitra.
Well, thank you, Subhas, for the warm welcome. And there's a few parts in that opening question, so perhaps just a little bit of information about myself. So as you introduced me, my name is James Gibb, and I'm a leadership coach. And this is something I've really got into over the last couple of years. After a 25-year corporate career, a large portion of that time spent at Dell Technologies. I really sort of gravitated towards coaching because it's a great way of helping people move forward. We all tend to have certain ideas or thoughts or beliefs, and they can be harmful or they can be helpful. And helping people decide which is which can be a great way of unblocking someone and moving them forward. I think mentoring has a large part in that as well. It's a different discipline than coaching, but ultimately it's about helping someone move forward. I've been fortunate to have done a lot of mentoring, both within my former company and also within some of the people in my local community. I'm based in Dubai, but originally from Scotland, as you might tell from the accent. So I think mentoring has a great role to play in life, not just business, in life, because we can all learn from others. We all have skills, capabilities, wisdom to pass on to others. So I think, this type of session today where we can perhaps share some of those ideas and thoughts will in itself be a great mentoring session perhaps as well. So that's a little bit about me and some of my philosophy.
Over to you, Chitra. Please tell us about the most influential mentor you have had, because I know that you have worked with a couple of mentors and also you worked with James. How did they impact your life?
So, Subhash, it's very difficult to pick one mentor to say who was my influential because each one of them had certain level of impact during my career journey. And they played very critical and pivotal role as I shaped up to the ladder of the leadership. But primarily, since we are now having to share this podcast with James, I would mention about James. I come from sales world where working fast, speed, agility was always on the go. And at one point of my career, I was feeling really burnt out, and I was having very good career discussion with my leader, and that's when I was introduced to James. And I'm very delighted to share we've now. I think it's close to about 4 years that I've known James, and I have worked with him, who's known for his towering strength to balance both career and his life. And how? Because James brings a fine balance between relaxation, hobbies, social connections, and more of fulfilling career. And I have had a monthly session and a series of discussions with James, who I think has transformed immense to bring that balance of both work and life, which I really have learned from him. Apart from that, and I wouldn't steal the thunder of knowing more about James, but James has shared about his experiences of reading books, writing weekly editions, running his marathons. Nearly about 1 year of coaching initially, it was all those right skills which was needed for me to, to balance uh, my work and also bring that level of well-being without sacrificing on the productivity at my work. And I can comfortably today say that it's become my second nature, because as you grow up in your career, it's very important to look at obsession of quality versus quantity. It's not about doing many things, but it's about doing one thing and you do it perfectly well, which I think is the great coaching and learning from James. So obsession over quality versus quantity has been my lessons from James, which I would really like to share with my viewers as well today.
We completely agree with that, primarily because quality is most important than the quantity. So now I'm going to James. What was the pivotal moment, James, that led you to the decision towards becoming a leadership and executive life coach?
Yeah, well, thank you first, Chitra, for the kind words. It's been a fantastic partnership really over these last 4 years. And, you've developed on top of so many strong skills already. So it's been a real pleasure to have worked with you over that time and continue to do so. I think, Subhash, for me, I don't think there was really a pivotal moment. It was more of a natural inclination, a natural feeling. I'd been coaching in some capacity for several years. I was a running technique coach at one of the big running clubs here in Dubai where I live. I've been obviously doing some coaching, some mentoring in my former company that I'd mentioned. And been doing a little bit of work with people just in my community here as well. So it just felt natural. It felt good. It felt like the right step to move forward, to move into. We're all change in life. There's no such thing as this straight linear career anymore, or perhaps even ever. So for me, it just felt like a natural movement, but it wasn't something I did overnight. It was really a culmination of small set of steps that eventually led to a bigger one.
Okay, so please give us an account of how you started it. I mean, there should be some trigger that must have happened within you. This is the time for me to get into the coaching world full time. Uh, what was that moment, and what was that trigger moment?
Well, that's a good question. I think a key trigger was writing. So writing is a big passion of mine, and it's something even from when I was a kid, right? I used to write football match reports when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. I used to write short stories. I actually wanted to be a journalist. That was my first idea of what a career could be. So there's something in my blood about writing, and I think it's because words are a great way to put down one's thoughts and to get clarity from those words themselves. I've always found that very beneficial. Chitra mentioned a short while ago, I have been writing this weekly newsletter called Deep Life Reflections, where there's things I'm thinking about, things I'm enjoying, things I want to share, and just being able to put that into words was really powerful. Before that, I've been writing these articles for one of the big business publications, but I try to take a different angle. Not really a big fan of all the corporate speak and, too much business jargon. I try and speak and write as normal as possible, So that clarity of message, I think that was a big part of it, Subhash, in terms of going into the coaching side, that ability to formulate my thoughts, put those down, help give me more clarity.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, James, having coached numerous senior executives over the years, what common mindset traits you observed among them?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is, everyone is clearly different. Everyone has their own unique set of experiences in life. They're all coming from a slightly different place because, we all have those unique components to ourselves. But I think there are commonalities and typical challenges that people have. That could be around leadership, best way to lead, manage a team, can be around getting better work-life balance, can be around communication, and that can be in professional relationships, personal ones, can be around personal growth, career, change management, and also a big one is around time and this perceived lack of time. So, those are a lot of the common challenges that people have, not just leaders, but again, they're very common. And coaching is all about helping people get more clarity to make better decisions, to move forward in life. And so one of the big things that I do, that any coach would do, is they would investigate. We all have these beliefs, ideas, these thoughts. And some of those have helped us. They're very helpful to us in life. And some of those hold us back. They hinder us. And my job as a coach is to work with the client and listen out for those beliefs and investigate, is that actually something that's moving you forward or is it holding you back? And that's really important because a lot of our outcomes are shaped by what we believe. So I like to work with people, listen out for those beliefs, those ideas, and ultimately then help them move forward. If it is a roadblock, how do we get past that? How do we work through it to help that person move forward in order to get that clarity that they're looking for?
Right. So, what you're saying, James, is it ultimately boils down to the belief systems, right? So, if the belief system is really pulling them down, that's when they need you more than anybody else at that point of time. Need you, meaning a coach for that matter, right? So, at what point one should really be ready to say that, yes, now I'm ready to be coached?
Well, I'd say that we all have beliefs, right? We all have our ideas and thoughts. So I think everybody can benefit from coaching for sure. It's not that you need a coach all the time for your entire life.
Yeah.
There will be phases of your life where a coach can be that independent person, not a family member or a friend, because a coach has a set of skills that have been really well learned and focused over a number of years typically. The ability, it sounds so crazy to say, but the ability to simply to listen to someone and reflect that back to them is not that common today. We're not really listening that well. We're ready to speak. Being able to listen to someone without judgment, being present. It's really difficult today's high-tech age. We've got phones going off. We've got messages going off every moment or two. I've often found that someone just having 45 minutes or an hour with me, free from the distraction and the pull of everyday life, is in itself quite therapeutic. Coaching is not therapy, I should add, but just that ability to get their thoughts out in one place and to have someone listen, but not out of sympathy. A coach isn't sympathetic. They can be empathetic, but it's about recognizing what that person is telling you and helping them move forward and see that. So I think, to answer your question, people, I think, will figure out there's a time for me, or the right time now is for me to go and see a coach. Because if you're struggling with something right now and it's been blocked for some period, whether it's about your career or how you're running a team, or even just getting your purpose in life, if that's a blockage and it feels like it's been ongoing, a coach is certainly someone that can help you.
Yeah. Could you also share some of the transformative case studies that you have really helped someone from sabotaging, their own careers because of whatever their belief systems, and to becoming a leader, where they want to be. Could you throw any scenarios or any of the case studies that you really have that that has really transformed someone where they want to be, rather than feeling themselves that they are not cut out for the world?
Sure. I mean, I think, again, going back to some of the commonality, a lot of the challenges are quite consistent because they do stem from those beliefs, those ideas, those thoughts, and typically they are getting in the way. But it's not just a negative component. Coaching has a very positive element to it as well. It's about moving forward, and it's about recognizing people's strengths. So one of the methodologies that I use, Subhash, in my coaching is called the CliftonStrengths. CliftonStrengths is, there's a lot of tools and methodologies out there. Some of your listeners might know about things like Hogan, the Ocean Personality Test, Myers-Briggs. CliftonStrengths is another big one. It was actually invented by a guy called Don Clifton. He was a pilot in World War II, psychologist. And after the war, he came back and he developed this assessment based on all of these research and questions and data. And through the team, this has actually worked with Gallup, with the huge research institute in the US. And so the CliftonStrengths, they came up with these 34 themes or talents that we all have, but we've all got different levels of them. And so when you take this assessment, which is about 40 minutes, and I've done it myself, it's very powerful, and there's a lot of science behind it. It actually gives you your top 5. So it gives you your top 5 strengths. And that can be really insightful. Number one, because you actually get to see what those strengths are. It feels, yeah, this is me, when you see those. That's a lot of my clients have had that experience. Where do you then see them, on a daily basis? Where are those strengths playing? And most importantly, how can you use them more? Because the essence, to boil all this down, the essence of the CliftonStrengths is when you focus where you're already strong, where those natural talents are, you will achieve growth and achieve your full potential far more effectively than by focusing on your weaknesses or those areas of opportunity, which is the conventional wisdom today, right? A lot of companies, end of year performance review, it's not so much where your strengths are, it's okay, what you need to focus on, where are those areas of opportunity, where are those weaknesses. But actually the research tells us that, we're not saying, you should never focus on your weaknesses. Clearly, if there's something major, you got to work on that. But if you want to get to where you think you want to go, or where that potential might be, focusing on those strengths is a fantastic way to get there. It's a powerful way to get there. And so knowing what your top 5 strengths are is really pivotal in that. But the thing is, these strengths, they're actually neutral. And what do I mean by that is, if you think about this, so these 34 strengths or talents, think of them like tools in a toolbox. Okay, so if you take out one of those strengths, and let's say it's the hammer, Okay? Now, the hammer can build. It can build a house, but it can also destroy, right? You can also break things with a hammer. That's what all of those talents are. They're actually neutral. It's how you use them. Because sometimes a strength you're using can actually be negative, particularly when you're under stress, under pressure. You might be using a talent in a negative way. So a big part of this is about being intentional, knowing what your strengths are and intentionally using them. And that is really powerful. And that plays into a lot of my philosophy, which is around leading an intentional life. That's what Deep Life Journey is. It's a coaching practice built on balance, intention, and cultivating those things that matter. So when it comes to clients, I always spend a good couple of sessions understanding their strengths. They take the assessment. And from there, Subhas, that's where we get a lot of insight. Because we'll then, with that understanding of strengths, can then help them move forward in their challenges and their beliefs by understanding what those strengths are and how they can help them move forward. It's like a roadmap to move forward.
Subhash, I would like to add here with an extension to CliftonStrengths. During one of my coaching sessions, James recommended me to do this. I took the assessment in Feb 2023, and I can tell you it's a little money that you have to invest, but it's worthwhile and also very meaningful activity. While all of us in the companies and also in our own personal way, there's a method to collect the 360-degree feedback. You can always go and seek feedback. But this sort of strength assessment really gives you that effective way of managing your day-to-day lives, looking at how you could really manage those relationships. And I wasn't surprised, neither shocked when I got the results, which I think was quite very known from my own feedback, from my own leaders and my mentors. But I think what it really prescribed for me is it gave me a detailed top 5 strengths that I could really leverage. I took those results. Firstly, of course, I did a debrief with James on how some of my behaviors were my top strengths, and some of them were my blind spots that I was not utilizing to my best capabilities. And I took that results again with my leaders. We discussed in detail on, no surprise, on harmony, relationship building, analytical skills, and how those skills were really on the top of my persona. And that really, I can tell you, is a worthwhile activity. And I strongly recommend all the viewers. We will share some of the links as a supporting links with this podcast. But worthwhile to share, and take the survey is what my recommendation is.
Oh, great. So that brings to, uh, you know, for me, it's an interesting question because most of the time that we have found that people who are introverts don't really come out very openly, and they tend to lose out on some leadership roles within the organization. They might be very good when it comes to technical things, but they're just very introverted in the way that they want to share their ideas. So, do you think that introverts are really people who shy away from leadership naturally, or you can actually groom them in a way that they can really become good leaders?
Well, I think everyone has the capacity to be a leader, and I think it's important that we don't, get too hung up on the word extrovert and introvert. It's there's a lot of shading, on that spectrum. You can. It's not either or. If I use an analogy, I'm a big Manchester United fan, and tough times for us at the moment have been for a while. But I think of someone like Roy Keane. So that maybe like this is my the hero right from when I was younger. And Roy Keane was the captain. He was the leader, and he set the tone. But Paul Scholes was the most creative player on that team. Now, Paul Scholes didn't have some of those qualities that Roy Keane had in terms of what we might naturally assume as leadership, which is the vocal, the presence, the charisma. But Paul Scholes was also a leader. He followed the leadership of Roy Keane, but through his own abilities, through his skill set, through his vision, he also was a leader of, he was a leader in that team in a non-traditional way. So, that's how I think about it. We all have the capacity to lead, and many of us already are, but just in a way that isn't traditional, and that can be in our personal lives. It can be, how we interact with our families. It can be through the skills that we've been building. So everybody has that capacity to lead. It's just how you want to define it.
Yeah. But how do you spot them? Because most often they're not, they are spotted rather than, raising the hand, yes, I'm a leader. How do you really look at some of these traits and spot, yes, this guy or this girl is going to be the next leader within the organization or in the team or whatever it is, right? I want to really get into understanding of really knowing these traits and then putting in day to days, because for viewers who are just seeing this or listening to this podcast, they want to really implement some of these traits right away so that they get benefit out of it, right? So what, according to you, have seen in your own in the coaching world, you might want to call, or within your own organization, how did you really spot some of the budding leaders?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes down to organizational culture. Good leaders will spot good talent, and they'll have the tools and the structure in order to do that. So I suppose what here I'm talking about is more of a larger company, a big organization, and they have a lot of things that help them do that. They have HR teams, talent management teams. There are, Chitra mentioned, there's a lot of programs in place. But we know that, just because you're a leader doesn't necessarily mean you're a good leader, right? Or if you're a manager, that you're a good manager. You have those titles, but they are just titles. You really have to demonstrate those capabilities. And there is a difference, been spoken about many times, the difference between managing and leading, right? You manage things, you lead people. And I think that's a good distinction. So there are these tools, there are these structures in place that help good leaders identify the next waves of talent. And I think things like the CliftonStrengths assessment is a really good tool as well, because once you take this assessment, as Chitra mentioned, I think it's about $25 to take it, which perhaps your company, can cover the cost for. Share that with your leader, your manager, because it's a great way to demonstrate that you're invested in yourself. Like, off your own back, you've taken this assessment to learn more about yourself, and you're sharing your strengths, your talents with your leader, with your manager. Do you recognize them? Is this me? And it's a really powerful thing to do with a leader, because it can help them get the best out of you. So if you're not someone that puts their hand up, or is the loudest voice in the room, there are other methods to get attention, and that is one way. Just sharing what your talents are in a private way, in a way that is that merits having an open conversation with someone, whether it's your manager, and they'll benefit. They'll appreciate that, because it will help them in their job as well. Because if you know where the talents of your team lie, then you can make sure they're in the right position and they're doing the right job, that they're doing the types of skills or projects that's going to get the best out of them. So it's this two-way process. So that's a couple of ideas, and from what I've seen, that can be really powerful.
So what you are essentially saying is that even if the organization is not sponsoring for this Clifton assessment tool, one can still go ahead and then see what their top 5 strengths are, and then go back to the manager and say that I have really taken this test, and this is what the tool says about me, and these are the 5 strengths that I have, and the organization can leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. I worked with a CEO in the UK last summer, and he was a relatively new CEO, and one of the first things we did was understand his strengths. And he has something called positivity as his number one. So but that could be both, it was who he was, but it could also be sometimes a downside. But he found tremendous value in learning about these strengths. He could see them, he knew where he had to rein some in, or where he could use them more. And he was so powerful, he actually asked all of his leadership team, all 12, to take the CliftonStrengths. So they then got to know and learn about each other as well. That's where a lot of the value can come from. And again, it's all about learning more about each other, where our strengths are, what we're good at, where we get that energy from. The more opportunity we have to know that, the better we will fare when it comes to our own satisfaction in life, our own ability to help, customers, or whether those are internal or external, and also when it comes to your own career trajectory as well. If you know where your strengths are and you know what you can do, you've got a great way to go and build on top of that to really set yourself apart.
So, James, let's say I've identified my 5 strengths using this Clifton assessment test, and I want to really put these 5 strengths into action, right? Sometimes I don't take really action, but I know my strengths, right? Do you think that something that has to do with the mindset, or because it's not always that I know that these are the 5 things that I can do exceptionally well, but I don't really take any action. That means that whatever that I know about my strengths is not really helping me unless I really take action on that, right? How do you as a coach really tell people it's time to take action now that you have known your strengths?
Well, I think the first thing I would say here is that the strengths themselves, they're not sort of practical things. Like I'm really good at, I'm really good at X, or I'm really bad at Y. These themes are things like, so for example, let me share. So my number one strength is discipline. Okay. So that means that when that's working well for me, it means I can be really structured, I can be really organized, I feel like I've got my life in order. The downside of that can be it can create a life where it's too rigid or you're not flexible. So when you get an invite to do something and it doesn't fit neatly into your life, you might say, well, no, I'm not doing that because I've got this. So that's the awareness of discipline. So where actually these talents are already in us, right? They were developed. They're a mixture of nature and nurture. And so these strengths, these talents are already in us. Okay, so whether we're actually doing them or not really depends on, that awareness level of, for some people they may be dormant, but chances are that these strengths actually you will recognize them. So that piece about awareness is first, and then recognizing, and then to your point about the intentionality and about the action, yeah, there is a sense of, okay, well, if this can help me, how can I use it more? How can I make sure I'm doing this, using my strengths on a more regular basis? So the question around accountability and action, I mean, that's a classic one, right? Procrastination is something that I think almost everybody suffers from, even those that say they don't, because we all procrastinate to some level on something, right? Because that is human nature. That is our flaws and what makes us human. There are ways, you can have, obviously someone like a coach, someone like a mentor, someone, a friend, a colleague. They can all be what we might call accountability partners, to use a term that's used a lot in business. Maybe a good way to think about this, as I mentioned, I used to be a running technique coach, and I used to love, I don't do so much now because I had a little bit of a health issue and I'm coming back from, but I used to do a lot of marathons and half marathons, and there was a lot of training involved in that. And I would often train with someone because we'd keep each other accountable. If you get up at 5:30 in the morning to go meet someone for a run, you're not going to leave them standing right at 5:30 if they've got up out of bed at 5:30 in the morning. And a lot of this is the same principle, but ultimately, out of all of this, those are sort of tactics, things like accountability partners, action plans. It all comes back again to our belief system and our thoughts and ideas. Well, why are you not moving forward? And why is not never a good word to use, because it's quite accusatory. As a coach, I would never say, why are you not doing this? I would say, how can you make sure that we start to put these strengths in action? What resources can you tap into? What people can you ask? What is getting in the way at the moment? How can we remove that? So there's ways to move forward. There's always different paths to take. But again, it goes back to what is the blind spot that's stopping you from moving forward? We've got to work on that first. Otherwise, it's going to be a repeating pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a point I want to really touch on, because it's a very interesting point, and you really made that very clear that procrastination is the killer, right? And you know what you need to do, but you don't take action, and if you don't take action, that's not going to materialize, and it happens to each one of us at one point or the other. What hacks have you come up with? If you can just share some 3 or 4, I think one you already mentioned, which is accountability, which I think is mostly a tactics per se. But I'm really looking at some 2 or 3 hacks that our viewers can use immediately, so that procrastination doesn't hold them back.
Well, I have to say, Subhash, I'm not really a big fan of hacks.
Okay.
And just even like the terminology around it, we're not a computer system, we're a human being. And I have a genuine belief that there's, in very few cases, there are shortcuts to anything worthwhile, and I think this is some of the challenges with modern life and in business, that there's so many, whether it's a TikTok video and Instagram, even LinkedIn now, which is getting fuller and fuller of all these, want to do this, here's how to do it, here's the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth is that creating something of value takes time. So a kind of a philosophy that I live by and have really gravitated towards is something called slow productivity. And it's not my term. Cal Newport, who is a best-selling author, he's a computer science professor, doesn't use any social media, never has done, has a great podcast called Deep Questions, which some of your viewers might want to check out. So Cal released this book called Slow Productivity last year, but he's been talking about this for some time. I've been following him for maybe 5 or 6 years, very influenced by his work. But the essence of slow productivity is that, you can build something of real value, but you don't need to sell your soul. You don't need to grind out 80-hour weeks. There's 3 tenets of slow productivity. Do less, work at your natural pace, and focus on quality. If you can work on those 3 areas, you start to build rare and valuable skills that become in demand. And they take time. For most of my career, I've been in something called corporate communications, copywriting, writing presentations, writing speeches for very senior leaders, managing, teams within that organization. I wasn't a great writer when I started. I'm not a great writer now, I don't think. There's always that continuation in the curve, that learning. But as I got good at writing, I started to really enjoy it. I thought, hey, I'm good at this. And I enjoy it, and I enjoy that craft. So I know they might be looking for hacks, but I don't think there are any. I think and for me, this slow productivity really works. It's the antithesis of hustle culture. I don't like hustle culture. I've never done it. I never have. I've been very fortunate in my 25-year career. I've never suffered from burnout. And I say this because some people might think, well, if you get to a certain level, burnout must have happened, but it doesn't. I think for me, it's because I've had a good balance between being ambitious, certainly career driven, but also I know when to have downtime, because I've got a lot of interests outside of work. I love to write, photography, running, spending time with friends, traveling, and there's a whole bunch of things that really pique my interest. I love to read different books. So this kind of slow productivity really resonates with me, and I know it really resonates with others as well, that want something that is not, hustle culture. And it's not about, not doing anything meaningful either, because as human beings, we like to accomplish things. We feel good when we accomplish things. That's evolutionary. So it's not about not accomplishing it. It's not about sort of giving up either. It's about you can create really meaningful things and have a good career and have financial stability, but there are other ways.
Yeah.
I think that's the key point. There are other ways.
So what you're saying is that shortcuts are not something that one should really go with, because we keep seeing these hacks coming every now and then. You're absolutely right. If you open LinkedIn or Insta or Facebook, you keep on seeing too many hacks. But how many of them will really help? We don't know. So what you're saying is that looking at the belief systems, and then looking at what your strengths are and looking at how you want to form strong habits will really determine how successful you would be, instead of really hunting for hacks.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to transform in life and you've identified some challenges or some things you want to, maybe you're good at something already and you want to get better. Again, it's not all the negative side. I think it's unlikely that a 10-second video on TikTok is going to help you do that. Of course, there's going to be hacking you in the kitchen, right? Here's how to make a better avocado salad. You add this ingredient, great. And so don't get me wrong. There are lots of little helpful tips out there and tricks on things, and even in technology, right? How to turn the camera off and on or something like this. So I don't want to say that there's nothing valuable out there. There clearly is, but when it comes to major, personal growth and change, a 10-second video is not going to do. And yeah, you have to understand yourself. You've got to interrogate and really look at, the bigger life picture. And it's not easy, and it's okay to make some missteps, but there are, again, there are strategies and ways forward, but it is over the long term. It is I've been writing this newsletter for just over 2 years now. Every Friday morning, it's about 6 hours to write, from writing to publishing. And I've been doing it every Friday, except a couple of Fridays when I had a health issue. I've been doing it every week because I'm committed to that's me using my discipline, right? That's me using my strength to do that, as well as my second and third talent, which is the second one is learner, which is my ability to enjoy learning and the process of learning and reading. And the third is intellection. These are not my words. This is my top 5. Intellection is deep thinking, being very reflective. That helped me create a newsletter called Deep Life Reflections that I publish every Friday. So it's just a tangible example of something that I enjoy, that I can do, and I'm using my strengths to help me write, publish regularly that newsletter. So
Yeah.
where can you use your strengths in the things that interest you and build those skills?
And I think, Subhash, I'm the perfect living example that James has really worked on, from a fast-paced life to, I wouldn't say get rid of that hustle culture, but I think I would say it's an art. It's a trait that you have to really learn through yourself. While these are all best tips that James talked about, but it's a process, it's a journey. There's no one shortcut to adapt, move on. But everybody has to go through the pressurized time target events. But there are methods to be productive. It's not about how much you do, it's about what you do and how well you do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so now the maybe we can wrap up the session with this question. With the advent of AI, right, many youngsters are getting into the trap of procrastination automatically. It's just not that, because AI can do anything. Now, if I wanted to write an article, I would have to really sit through, research, do everything, and then come up, my own thoughts, and then write about it. For example, because you You are yourself a writer, James. So I know you have that discipline built into you right from the childhood. But for youngsters, how do you really encourage them to use some of their mental capacities to the best possible way? Because now AI can do almost everything. How do you really encourage that?
Yeah, so I think, obviously AI is changing things and it is a very powerful tool. And I think it is bringing good things and it is bringing some not so good things. And I think there are people looking at that, to try and get some sense of control over that. How successful they're going to be, I'm not so sure, because it's almost like, the horse is bolted in many ways. I think ethics and privacy are going to be a huge talking point over the next couple of decades. But in terms of what AI can do, I mean, yes, it can be a great tool, but I would caution against being very reliant on it. And you mentioned there, Subhas, around, you can write an article on AI. I mean, you can, but it won't be very good, is the bottom line. AI is very predictable in how it writes. And I think that's a good thing, because if AI ever reaches the singularity, which is actually replicating and exceeding human intelligence, then I think we do have a problem, but we are nowhere near that and hopefully never will. One thing I would say is that we should never lose sight of our very human capabilities: nuance, complexity, discourse, debate, originality. Those flaws make us human. I always say, nobody can write a Stephen King book except Stephen King or George Orwell or Franz Kafka, because they are working with their gut instinct. They are working with the human nature. So don't, I wouldn't say don't, but just be really aware of not giving up your agency. We all have creativity within us, and writing might not be your thing, and that's fine. For a lot of people, it isn't, but there will be other things. Critical thinking, free thinking, is really important for us as human beings. We shouldn't really be going to ChatGPT to ask it everything, because we will lose that ability to think for ourselves. And we've done pretty well as a species thinking for ourselves. If you look at, what are the 2 million years of human beings, sapiens, being on this planet, we've done a lot of good. But let's not forget that, amongst the things that we didn't get right, and still don't. But there's a lot of good, and a lot of that does come down to our relationships, our human relationships, our ability to think critically, our ability to debate, our ability to listen without getting offended. There's a lot of things in there that I think are very human and that we should continue to, to keep. And I would also say, we shouldn't get too caught up in AI and even tech itself. And I say this as somebody who worked in technology and uses technology all the time. I often go back to my books, hard books, physical copies. I love talking to people and debating and listening and learning something. I learn a lot from Chitra as well. It's like, it's not a one-way system. The mentoring side of things, I've learned a lot more about culture that Chitra has, and Asher as well. Just shared with me some of her journeys and experiences and her life story. Very, very intelligent, thoughtful lady, as is Chitra. That there's a lot of back and forth. And I think when you engage in those types of conversations and that type of critical thinking, it builds character, it builds originality, it also builds resilience as well.
Yeah.
And it builds wisdom. And I don't think we ever want to give those things up. And there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom, because I can think of AI as this massive source of knowledge, but there was a British journalist that once said, knowledge is knowing that the tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. And the way I think AI would say, put the tomato in the fruit salad, because it is optimizing for logic, not understanding. So I think it's fine to continue to make mistakes, to not be perfect, and to continue to discuss and debate and use this wonderful knowledge that we have accumulated as human beings through history to help us, to help guide us and shape us going forward. So yeah, use AI. It can help in a number of ways, but automate the things that is taking up the time, but keep your creative side separate.
James mentioned we all today have wealth of knowledge, but poverty of wisdom. I don't know if, James, you mentioned this in one of your articles, I remember. So we have wealth of knowledge today, but poverty of wisdom. So I think, yeah, we all need to embrace this change. We all are part of this artificial intelligence wave. But to extend to what James mentioned, connectivity, critical thinking, and three things that stands out from my own mentors and some great leaders that I have inspired to is keep that soft skills on as well. And that would be your communication skills, make it more stronger, your collaborative skills on how you connect, network. Networking is net worth. So continue to build that network because it will pay you off. Like I'm doing today. I met Subhash in one of the AI summits, and here we are doing a podcast. So that's network is net worth. And I think apart from that is also on how you keep up that continuous learning process. You've got to be student for life. You have to be agile. You have to be nimble, but also stay abreast of what's happening across the industry with the latest advancements and in the AI. Not that you have to forgo what's happening around the industry. Keep up that learning. Keep up your online workshops. Listen to these sort of podcasts that's coming across because different perspectives will teach you different learnings. So I think that's our thought process around how AI is taking up the world. But at the same time, your authenticity of being a human will not separate you from being an artificial and intelligent.
And that's true. Nicely put it, Chitra. Lastly, are there any tools and methodologies what can download or what can start using it? I know you spoke about Clifton, but anything other than that?
Well, I think the greatest resources are books, and the knowledge and the wisdom that's already been accumulated by very smart thinkers and writers, from history. There's there's a ton of different types of whatever you're interested in, whether it's fiction, nonfiction. I've always loved books. I think, what do they say? The reader lives 1,000 lives. So I'm just a big proponent for books. I'm a big proponent for books because not only are they very enjoyable, but they can also be very educational. Again, depending on the type of book you read, that there's a lot of self-growth books out there, personal growth. I read Mindset by Carol S. Dweck a few months ago. That was excellent. That's back in 2006, but still very relevant about the fixed and the growth mindset. And it's not binary. We have elements of both depending on the situation. Again, I'm a great believer there's a lot of shade in life. So yeah, I think the other reason I love books is that it allows for that sort of deep thinking. I really push back against this whole, someone once said to me, your newsletter, why are you doing newsletter? It's too long, do a video. Tends to say, I don't want to do a video. There are enough videos out there, long form writing, for those that want to read it, and they don't have to read mine. They might not like mine. That's absolutely fine. But when you invest in something and you do read, you're triggering that part of the brain that is critically thinking, and you're creating depth, and you're turning away from the instant gratification that sadly plights us in today's world, and you're sort of making a case for depth and breadth over shallowness. And I think the more we can, Jonathan Haidt is doing great work in this. He's a social psychologist that's made a number of recommendations that I think actually a lot of governments, European and US governments, are looking at putting in place things like not, smartphones for, no smartphones if you're under 16, and more of these types of legislation to protect the young. But it's not just the young people, right? It's us as well as adults. We need to set a better example by not reaching for our phones. So when it comes to resources, I think books are great. but also being more intentional about how we use things like our phone, because I think that sets the right example. And also for us, it's good to let our brains have some downtime and some quiet. We don't need to be on all the time. The world does not end if you turn your phone off, contrary to what some people might think.
What advice do you give for youngsters who, instead of following something, they truly become leaders?
Okay. So, Subhash, very good question. And I think from changing the perspective from a followers to leaders needs an immense transformation. And it's a journey once again. It's a daily process. And for that, I think the top three things that has worked for me as well, because I was at one point of time a individual contributor and turning to be a leader myself. One has to be very bold. One has to be proactive to take the responsibility and accountability of their own team members, to be able to inspire and influence and create that impact in the individuals. The second important thing for me is to be able to take risk, because you are not going to sit at a comfort zone and say, I'm here to fight the world. You got to really take that risk to be able to challenge the situation and also be supporting your team, you're supporting your army wherever needed. So, in a summary, I would say, take risk, be proactive, be accountable to the leader, to the team members that you have, and enjoy the journey. That would be my summary.
Okay, great. So, what is that one mantra that you stand by every single time?
One mantra, and this goes again from my follower, being a follower to a leader, is lift up everyone as you move in the journey. Definitely, because I strongly believe that as you move forward in your career, in your work life, take that team members along with you, give that credit and contribution to the team members, acknowledge their contributions as well, which is very important. And that's where all those things that you've done for them will really repay back. Reward the team members, recognize them where needed, appreciate in public, and make sure that you are recognizing their efforts time and again to acknowledge what they have put in on a day-to-day basis. So it's definitely lifting up everyone as you move in the process.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for this insightful thoughts, James and Chitra. We appreciate that you took your time and then shared with our viewers some of the nuggets that they would not really find anywhere on the internet. I'm very sure about it. And thank you so much. And we would love to have you one more time based on what the topic would really demand. Thank you once again.
Well, it's been a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Subhash.